There's something almost sacred about a family cabin, the kind of place where the air smells faintly of old pine and nostalgia, where every creaky floorboard carries the echoes of stories told long before you. It's where generations of my family once sat on the same porch, sipping coffee at dawn, while the lake mist drifted across the water like a whispered secret. My grandfather had a saying, "Land is more than dirt. It's your roots." For nearly a century, this lakeside cabin has been ours. Not just a retreat, not just a roof over our heads, but a living heirloom, a reminder of family, history, and that rare kind of peace you only stumble upon far away from city limits, and far away from clipboard-wielding bureaucrats. Which is exactly why I didn't take kindly to Patricia Harrington storming into my cabin as if she carried a badge and a warrant. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled, and there she stood, Patricia Harrington, president of the Pine Ridge HOA. Her face was twisted in righteous fury as she pointed a shaking finger at me and my guests. She was clearly revving up for another one of her infamous tirades about noise violations and unauthorized gatherings. But then she saw him. At my dining table, casually enjoying his grilled salmon, sat Daniel Morrison, the state attorney general himself. Fork still raised halfway, he slowly set it down, dabbed his mouth with a napkin, and raised a single eyebrow. You know that look lawyers have? Calm, sharp, and cutting all at once. Patricia froze. Her mouth hung open, but no words came out. For the first time in the 3 years I'd known her, she was completely speechless. Now, before I tell you what happened next, let me back up. My name is Robert Sullivan, and I own this lakeside cabin, a place that's been in my family for 4 generations. My great-grandfather built it back in 1922, long before the Pine Ridge subdivision ever existed. The cabin sits on 5 acres of private land, well outside the HOA's jurisdiction, but good luck explaining that to Patricia Harrington. She moved to Pine Ridge about 5 years ago, and from the moment she set foot in the neighborhood, she made it her mission to run the HOA. She won the presidency by promising to raise standards and protect property values. What she actually did was crown herself neighborhood tyrant. She measured lawns with a ruler, issued violation notices if your trash cans lingered on the curb longer than 2 hours. And in one infamous case, she fined a family $300 because their daughter's chalk art on their own driveway was deemed unsightly. 6 months ago, my cabin became her new obsession. Even though my land isn't under HOA control, Patricia decided my property was close enough to hurt her precious neighborhood's image. First came her noise complaints. She claimed she could hear my occasional gatherings from half a mile away. Then came wild accusations about my trash somehow blowing into HOA yards, despite the thick forest between us. And last month, she escalated to threats about illegal short-term rentals and unregistered visitors. The truth? I'm a wildlife photographer. I live for solitude. My gatherings are rare. But this weekend was different. An old college roommate, James, was visiting, and he brought along a few friends for a quiet reunion dinner. Among them was Daniel Morrison, who had gone from our debate team captain back in college to becoming the state attorney general. We weren't hosting some wild party. Just 5 old friends laughing, catching up, sharing grilled salmon and craft beer on the deck. Nothing louder than the clink of bottles and the sound of old stories. But apparently Patricia had been watching. Through binoculars. Again. She spotted the cars in my driveway and decided this was her big moment. I had just set the salmon on the table when I heard her stomping up the gravel driveway. I recognized that furious staccato of heels from previous run-ins. Usually she at least knocked first, or pounded, really. Not this time. The door flew open, and she barged into my home. Like she owned it, dressed in her standard uniform, pressed khakis, a Pine Ridge HOA polo, clipboard in hand. Her face flushed red with indignation as she launched into her attack, This is absolutely unacceptable, she barked, waving her clipboard like a weapon. I have documented evidence of multiple vehicles on this property which constitutes an unauthorized gathering under HOA Regulation 7.3. Furthermore, I have reason to believe you're operating an illegal— And then she stopped, because that's when she finally noticed who was sitting at my table. James had his beer frozen halfway to his lips. Another friend, Mark, still held his napkin midair, and Daniel Morrison, the Attorney General, was watching Patricia, with the kind of stare he probably used in a courtroom. Steady, precise, and merciless. "Ma'am," Daniel said, his voice calm but firm, "I'm going to need you to explain why you just entered this gentleman's home without permission." Her clipboard shook. Her eyes darted from his face to the state seal embroidered on his jacket hanging on the chair. "This is HOA business. I have the authority to— Do you have a warrant?" Daniel cut her off. "Are you a law enforcement officer?" Daniel asked firmly. Patricia stiffened. "No, but I am the HOA president, and this property is affecting our community standards," she stammered, scrambling to pull her authority back around her shoulders. Daniel rose slowly to his full height, 6'3" of calm, deliberate authority towering over Patricia's 5'4" frame. His voice was level, but it cut through the room like a blade. "Ma'am, what's your full name?" Patricia Harrington," she muttered, her tone much smaller now. "Ms. Harrington," Daniel continued, "are you aware that entering someone's home without permission constitutes criminal trespass in this state? That's a Class A misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail and a $2,500 fine." The color drained from Patricia's face. But I thought HOA rules clearly state— "The HOA rules don't supersede state law," Daniels interrupted smoothly. His words landed like a gavel. "And from what I understand, this property isn't even part of your HOA. Is that correct, Robert?" I finally found my voice and nodded. "That's right. My family's property predates Pine Ridge by 60 years. I've told Ms. Harrington this more than once." Daniel turned back to her. His voice was calm, but unyielding. "So, to be clear, you entered private property outside your jurisdiction. You disrupted a private dinner, and you did it without permission. Ms. Harrington, do you realize you could be arrested right now?" Her hands trembled. The clipboard slipped from her grip, scattering papers across my hardwood floor. Violation notices, photographs she'd taken of my land from the roadside. I was just trying to protect our community," she whispered weakly. "By breaking the law?" Daniel shot back. He pulled out his phone. "Robert, I assume you've got cameras?" "Yes," I said, pointing toward the discrete unit in the corner. "They record 24/7, audio and video." "Excellent." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "Ms. Harrington, I suggest you leave immediately and strongly advise you consult an attorney." Patricia bent to scoop up her papers, her hands shaking so badly she fumbled them. "Leave those," Daniel said evenly. "They're evidence now." Her face crumpled, tears threatening to spill. Without another word, she straightened and practically bolted from the cabin. We heard her heels clattering down the gravel, followed by the slam of a car door and the roar of tires as she sped away. For a long moment, the cabin was silent. Then James let out a low whistle. Well, that was something. Daniel sat back down, cool as ever, and picked up his fork. "Robert, I'll need a copy of your security footage, and I want to see everything you've got on her history of harassment." So I did. For the next hour, I showed him the folder I'd been keeping. Dozens of letters, baseless complaints, snapshots of her lurking near my property, even emails, threatening lawsuits over HOA rules that had nothing to do with me. The more Daniel read, the deeper the frown etched across his face. "This isn't just trespassing," he said finally. "This is a clear pattern of harassment and abuse of power. Has she done this to anyone else?" "Oh, absolutely," Mark chimed in. "My cousin lives inside Pine Ridge. People there are terrified to hang Christmas lights without Patricia's pre-approval. Daniel typed quick notes into his phone. Robert, file a formal complaint first thing tomorrow. My office will handle the rest. This level of behavior from an HOA president is completely unacceptable. The rest of the dinner carried on, but the mood had shifted. The laughter returned in small doses, though Patricia's intrusion still lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. As my friends packed up to leave, Daniel pulled me aside. His voice softened. I'm sorry this happened during your reunion, but I'm glad I was here. People like Patricia think a scrap of authority gives them the right to trample others' rights. She's about to learn otherwise. He wasn't kidding. 2 days later, Patricia Harrington received a formal notice from the Attorney General's office. She was under investigation for criminal trespass, harassment, and abuse of authority. The letter also warned her, any further contact with me or my property would mean immediate arrest. That same day, chaos erupted inside the Pine Ridge HOA. My neighbor Tom, who lived just within the HOA boundaries, told me the details later. 3 board members resigned on the spot, desperate to avoid being tied to criminal charges. The rest voted unanimously to strip Patricia of her presidency. She tried to defend herself, raving about protecting property values, but when the HOA lawyer laid out the legal liability she'd created, it was over. Patricia Harrington was officially removed as HOA president, but her nightmare was just beginning. The Attorney General's investigation uncovered far more. She had illegally entered at least 4 other homes claiming HOA business. She had issued fines without board approval and even pocketed some of the money. 3 weeks after bursting into my cabin, Patricia Harrington stood in court. Gone was the iron-fisted tyrant of Pine Ridge. In her conservative gray suit, shoulders slumped, she looked small, broken. She pled guilty to 1 count of criminal trespass and 2 counts of harassment. The judge, a longtime colleague of Daniel's, was stern. Ms. Harrington, he said gravely, you used your position to bully and intimidate your neighbors. You invaded their privacy. You trampled their rights. That is not just illegal. It is a betrayal of the trust placed in you, Patricia. Clutched the defendant's table for balance. Her face was pale, her eyes wet. I hereby sentence you to 6 months in jail, suspended pending 2 years of probation. You will pay $1,500 in fines, complete 100 hours of community service, and you are permanently barred from serving on any HOA board in this state. Her lawyer had warned her this was coming, but hearing it aloud struck her like a physical blow. Her knees buckled, and for the first time, the woman who had terrorized an entire neighborhood whispered, "Yes, Your Honor," through her tears. Her reign was over. If you enjoyed seeing justice finally catch up to a power-hungry HOA president, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want more real stories where everyday folks stand up to petty power and win, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because trust me, there's plenty more HOA drama, revenge, and courtroom justice still to come.